question of forming a state in Palestine. The Jewish way of life really covers every aspect of our lives. I would say it covers our lives from the cradle to the grave. And we try to live every aspect of our life according to the teachings that have been handed down to us, and which we are taught were revealed to Moses at Sinai, as is written in the Torah and the 5 books of Moses. One of the aspects that were handed down to us was the question of where the Jewish people would live. As you possibly know, the Jewish people were in exile. Well, they more than exile. The people were formulated in Egypt. They had come. The forefathers Abraham had lived in now known as Palestine, the Holy Land, and then his son Isaac, Jacob, they went down to Egypt, and they were there for a long time, hundreds of years. And then the Jewish people were taken out of Egypt, and they would spend 40 years in the wilderness, and they came to Palestine. And during that time, the Torah was revealed to us. And one of the aspects of the Torah is where the Jewish people should reside. And it is quite clearly written in our teachings, and it is handed down in our oral teachings. I've explained to some members of the audience here before that our Torah is not just the written. The written is actually a very small part of our teaching, but the Torah comprises the written teachings plus a vast body of oral back-up, which we are taught was handed to Moses at the same time as the written teachings. And in fact, the written scriptures are almost incomprehensible without the backup of the oral teachings. There it's quite simple. He said that the Jewish people would reside in the Holy Land. But, this is the essential part, only subject to certain conditions. And the conditions were basically that they had to maintain certain standards, ethical, religious, moral standards. Otherwise, in our teaching is taught, if these standards were not maintained, the Jewish people would be sent into a divinely decreed exile and spread out the world. The Jewish people lived in Palestine from the time of the Exodus from Egypt until, on and off, there was a gap in the middle, but approximately 1,500 years. But sadly, the conditions which let me just switch my phone didn't go, but it might go, but I switched it on. Forgive me, these phones. And I thought it was my phone for a moment. Sadly, the conditions required were not maintained, and as was foretold, the Jewish people, and as history confirms, the Jewish people were sent into an exile, and in fact was spread around the 4 corners of the globe. But as I said, it was a divinely decreed exile, and with certain requirements. We are taught that we have to live as loyal citizens in every country we find ourselves. We're not allowed to form a state of our own. And on top of that, part of the teaching is that we're not allowed to try and fight our way or force our way out of the exile by the efforts of our own hands. If we do, this will be considered as a rebellion against the wishes of the Almighty, and we are warned that to do so will produce dire consequences. That is the Jewish belief approach. From that it's obvious that in no way are we allowed, from a Jewish belief point of view, to form a state of our own in Palestine. Completely proscribed and under risk of dire consequences if we were to do so. Zionism ignores that completely. Zionism, as we mentioned earlier, is a secular nationalistic group they have nothing to do, they won't have no wish to understand, have anything to do with this aspect of it being a divinely decreed exile. They say that the Jews, the old Jews, the old generation, had what they call the Golus mentality. The Golus means the Hebrew word for exile, the exile mentality. No, we have to, as modern terminology says, get our act together and form a state of our own in Palestine. So, from a Jewish belief, that flies completely in the face of our teachings, of our belief teachings. So, there, straight away, before we go any further, Zionism and Judaism from a Jewish belief point of view are diametrically opposed and are incompatible. But let's get on to the second. That's in a nutshell. We may have questions on that side of it, but that in a nutshell is the approach to Zionism from a Jewish belief. But what about, this is very important, the Jewish religious values of humanitarianism? Zionism, by definition, involved going into somebody else's land and taking it over and forming a state for a particular group. In other words, nothing more, nothing less than a form of colonialization. And you know that in Palestine, before the Zionist movement started, there was an old indigenous Jewish population. The majority, of course, were Palestinians, but there was an old indigenous Jewish population for hundreds of years who lived alongside the Palestinian population and lived peacefully. There may have been odd squabbles, I mean, that's how it goes in society, wherever it is, but basically they lived alongside the Jew, and not only in Palestine, but in all the Muslim Arab lands. There were thriving Jewish communities going back hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And then you had the Zionist pioneers, whose aim was to come in